Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as she is quantum extracted into episode 508. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
Pretty good. How about you?
Coming down with a cold.
Oh, no.
Jim got a cold again, and so now I'm getting it. About a week and a half
I
after.
think you guys are just passing around to each other is all you're doing.
Probably. Well, it doesn't help when that, she comes to our bed and sleeps and coughs in my face all night.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Did you guys do anything this week? I went and saw Ghostbusters since nobody else is going to chime in. Ghostbusters Afterlife. Everybody seen it?
I have not.
Oh, no. Keith. Well, I can only say that it's the most satisfying sequel I've seen in a long, long time. And it hits all of the right nostalgia buttons. It's not without its problems. It has a few little things that I thought maybe were a little too unexplained, but it's so much fun, and it's full of little surprises and nods and callbacks. It's totally worth the money. In fact, I'm thinking about going to see it again this weekend.
It's so good.
You went to the AMC, Sean?
I did. We had to jump through some pretty massive hoops to make it happen that way, but got to go see it in IMAX in Manhattan, and that was worth it too.
Well, I saw you got the Ecto 1, so that's how I knew you went to an AMC.
That was kind of the whole impetus of it. It was, when they announced it, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a cool popcorn bucket." And then they said that it was, kind of an opening night thing, and it was like, and I can't order them online. I have to be in theater, huh? And then I called the Manhattan AMC, and they're like, "Yeah, we got about 100 of them." And I was like, But we pulled some strings and jumped through the hoops and ran down and saw it and ran back and got my popcorn bucket, and it was insanely worthy. And I asked the guy, he hands us the box and then hands us a bucket of popcorn. And I said, "What, you're not ripping these open and pouring the oily, greasy popcorn right on the inside in front of the collectors?" And he stopped for a minute and he goes, "We considered it." But yeah, the movie's great. If you're waiting for the official review, I'm hoping to get the Flix with Friends version of the review up in the next day or so. But yeah, go see this movie.
Yeah, man, so good. More than I anticipated, more than I expected. Sometimes my expectations get a little higher than they should, and this one I didn't even get close to the expectations I had for it. So,
well, they've been teasing us with this movie, not just in the "Hey, are we ever going to make one?" but Ghostbusters Afterlife is. It feels like 5 years that we've been waiting for this thing to come out, and so with every delay, we've bumped the date to such and such. Oh, COVID happened, so we've bumped the date to this. Oh, now we're going to make you wait one more week. I was fairly convinced the movie didn't exist. Like, I thought that maybe they had just filmed a trailer and that was it, and eventually they were going to reveal this big joke. Fooled you, because I wasn't sure it actually was going to happen. And then they started doing the talk show rounds and hitting the promotion circuit, and I'm like, well, there may actually be a movie, but I'm not going to believe it until I sit in the theater and the screen comes up and it says Ghostbusters Afterlife, and then there's an actual film and not just clips of Mac and me, because I wouldn't put that past Paul Rudd either.
Yeah.
It kind of hit me when I was about 2/3 of the way through it. What makes it work the most is it's not just a Ghostbusters film. It's like they took Ghostbusters and crammed in some Goonies and then added a dash of Gremlins, and that's exactly what the movie is.
It's tonally spot on. Whereas, regardless of your feelings politically about the 2016 movie, it in my mind, it failed because they set out to make a comedy.
Right.
And Ghostbusters isn't a comedy. It's a sci-fi movie and a horror movie and a comedy, and it's got all of these. Yeah, exactly. They don't set out to tell a joke. They just happen to have a joke, and this hits that same level of. Yeah, it just checked all the boxes, and it feels very 80s, even though it's not.
the 2016 one tried to just be a comedy, I think is what you're trying to say, because Ghostbusters is a comedy, but it's a horror comedy. And that's where the new Ghostbusters missed it.
And the 2016 also tried to update the comedy to be more modern style of comedy.
And also the jokes went too far. Like just at about the time that you felt like they should have stopped, they kept going. And it was like, okay, you obviously drew that out too far, so now it's not funny.
Well, that's been kind of the comedy trend lately, or at least a while.
That's true. Anyway, we're not here to bash the 2016. We're here to praise. We're here to praise Afterlife.
Wasn't my goal. But yeah, no, Afterlife, amazing.
Did you guys do anything else this week? Well, if you have to think that long, then we'll go ahead and move on to. Let's just move on to the review, because man, I am so excited to talk about this week's episode.
Oh, does that mean you liked this week's episode?
Man, did I like this week's episode.
Really?
Keith, you got a synopsis for Village of the Angels?
Devon, November 1967. A little girl has gone missing. Professor Eustace Jericho is conducting psychic experiments.
Can you state your name, please?
Claire Brown.
In the village graveyard, there is one gravestone too many.
It's happening again.
We're missing a little girl.
Why is Metterton known as the Cursed Village? And what do the Weeping Angels want?
Everyone in the village disappears on the 21st of November, 1967.
Jericho, wait! What's going on?
Tonight.
I don't have a dun big enough for this episode. I couldn't even do it. I couldn't even come close.
I could, but it would blow out your ears. So. Out of respect for our listeners being able to tune in again next week, I'll refrain.
I'm afraid I'd break another mic if I tried. So.
Oh, that's what happened.
I squeezed so hard that I broke my other microphone. Gosh. Okay, well, let's start at the beginning. Finally, a cliffhanger is resolved satisfactorily. Now, that being said, it was still a pretty easy out, but at least we got to see the cause and effect and how it happened. She had to do some technobabble and then some technical jiggery pokery, but we actually got a pick right up where we left off, get us out of this situation, and then move on with the story. And I was this was the most satisfactory way of getting out of the cliffhanger since this show, this season began. So kudos to that. That was the number one thing that once that happened, I was like, okay, we got past that. This is going to be okay. And man, it sure was.
I agree. I liked it a lot. It is also, but at the same time, it's a tough story to try to review because we haven't seen the resolution of it. So some of this story for me could fall down in the future because it either doesn't get resolved or it doesn't have as satisfactory of an ending. But all the way leading up to that, it's fantastic.
Boy, I 100% disagree with that, because even if this doesn't resolve well, even if the story that follows this or stories that follow this don't resolve this setup well, I still would come back to this and say this was still a terrific episode. Too bad that they didn't build on this and continue on. But I would still, even if it just the next episode completely tanked and was absolutely, and didn't even, let's just say they didn't even touch the ending of this one, I would still go back to this one and say, well, at least this episode was a banger because it was so good. It was that good. I think this is the best episode in the 13th Doctor's season or tenure. This is absolutely my favorite episode of all of Jodie's run, including Rosa, including what was the one that was set in India or
Demons
Pakistan?
Of the Punjab.
Yeah, Demons of the Punjab. better than those, better than anything that Spyfall, anything that I've praised. Gosh, man, I was just blown away by this episode. It was so good. What else made this episode great was Professor Jericho.
Yes.
Oh my
he
gosh.
Is by far, that's probably one of the best parts of it.
He never got bogged down in that. A lot of times when you have this type of character, there's that that pressed disbelief. Like I've got to discredit everything at every turn that the Doctor's trying to say. Now, he did things where you could tell he wasn't quite sure, or he did things where he thought maybe something else would work better, but he never ever did that. No, I don't absolutely don't believe what's going on here. This is absurd. He wasn't that type of guy, and he totally could have been the way that the character was set up. But just to be very much, he was just on board with everything. Okay, what do we need to do? I mean, the character's just
and just his glee wanting to try to do the reading as well.
Yeah.
The Doctor, makes contact with what's her face. That part was fantastic.
He first of all gains mad bonus points for having one of the best names of a character in the history of named characters. Eustace Jeremiah Jericho. Eustace Jericho. I mean, just right off the bat, that is a win-win right there.
And even the Doctor is like, "Oh, good on you."
Good name.
and then you follow that up with the not so subtle play that the walls of Jericho come tumbling down and the angels are there and there's all kinds of religious connotations, and it's like, okay, I'm on board with this. I love a little I love a little symbolism in my Doctor Who. Bring it on.
Right.
And then you're right. He's got this very I'm on board. Now, part of that might just be, he's studying psychic phenomena. Yeah. Even in the 60s, this is not exactly a respectable field.
Sure.
It's true.
So his willingness to jump on board may have something to do with that, but it doesn't matter. He at no point in time did even the implausibility of stone statues surrounding the house really bother him once he got past the initial shock of it.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? He wasn't the guy standing in the corner going, "This is scientifically impossible." This is. He was fully open to the idea of, "I don't understand enough about how this works."
All right.
And that just, he was such a great character.
I think the other thing that number one, the actor. I've always liked Kevin McNally. I love him as Gibbs in Pirates of the Caribbean. I didn't remember this until I was looking at his IMDb, but he was also in the Twin Dilemma. He was.
I remember us talking about.
Yeah, he was Hugo Lang, and I think after I saw that, I remembered us talking about it years ago.
And he'd done some Big Finish too. I think we talked about him then too.
He has.
I love Mr. Gibbs,
but I want him to have a spinoff. I want Professor Jericho to have a spinoff series set in the 1960s. He and Claire,
Well, first he's got to get back to the 60s.
Well, that's true. He's back in 1901 now. So,
I wonder if it's possible for Big Finish to shoehorn in a whole series of.
Well,
can we bring him on countermeasures and then dump him back where he started in order to get nabbed?
But providing he survives, I think that even if he's stuck in 1901, I would still love to see him, exploring phenomena in 1901. Might make it even more interesting because he's going to have a lot more ignorance and pushback and disbelief. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's ripe for stories. It's just let's do that. I like that. Sean, let's get on that. We're going to write some stories, shop them around.
Can we make them like steampunk Ghostbusters?
There you go.
He can be the Egon.
I think also another thing I like about this is Yaz feels like she gets a little more to do in this story, which I think has been pretty much lacking all along. And Dan gets put back on the back burner this time. So it was. I still don't think we're not exploring her character enough, but at least she got more to do, and she seemed to be more of the take charge. She was more of the kind of the guidance in this, especially when her and Dan get sent back. So I really appreciated the fact that we're getting more Yaz in this story as well.
Well, it seems like whenever there is quote unquote police work to do, that's when Yaz gets to step up and actually take charge and do something. And it'd be nice to see her do that with something that's not kind of police related, but at least she gets to do something.
That was exactly the thought I had. I wondered, I was like, yay, Yaz is doing something. Oh, wait a minute, it's police work. And so I then struggled with okay, so is this a crutch that we're leaning on, that she only gets to do this? I mean, she does a little bit, don't get me wrong. With having what would the doctor do and that kind of stuff on board. Are you here to repair? Yes, I am. Let's go find out what's going. So she is taking the initiative, but it really seems like her moments to shine are when there's police work. And so now I'm wondering, okay, is this a crutch for the character in that she can really only step up when it's inside her comfort zone? Or is it just merely her default position that, yeah, I got that. I mean,
that's a good point.
Throw something hard at me, and maybe I'll have to rely on the doctor to get us out of it.
Because then, if that's just that's the exploration of her character, then it's just there's not enough. I mean, it's not
exploration. It's just that's who her character
exactly.
is.
Exactly.
It's a job as opposed to character development. So, yeah. But that's a little niggle, and that kind of falls back on the way Yaz has been treated for the last 2 seasons in general.
Right.
But it was good to see her do stuff. And even Dan taking a step back wasn't a bad thing.
No, not at all.
Because by this point in the story, I feel like Dan is so caught in the eddy of the events that he is floating downriver on a log with no hope of navigating any of this. He's just kind of waiting for the huge waterfall to come along. Right. And so I like the fact that he was the one going, "Are we in trouble? Okay."
When he was asking Yaz all these questions, and she's like, "I don't know, just shut up."
Yeah.
Okay. And other characters would have just kept going, and they would have made a big fight about it. But the fact that he just kind of, all right, I let it out. I'm done. Let's move on.
Well, and it's nice to have Yaz on her back foot as well with a villain that all you get is what the doctor gives them right off the bat.
Yeah, briefly off the bat.
Very briefly. There's recaps and there's, oh yeah, don't do this. Okay. So that was kind of refreshing too, that because a lot of times you feel like Yaz maybe has the confidence that isn't there just by the actress's presence.
Yeah.
You didn't get that in this one.
I think Yaz and Dan not having a lot of information too on the Angels ratcheted up the tension, because especially when they get sent back, you think, okay, what are they going to do? They haven't had any sort of experience with Angels before. They don't know all the ins and outs. They don't know the nuances. They've got just that little bit that the doctor dumped on them at the beginning of the story. And so it ratchets up that tension a little more, because you're like, okay, they're in real danger now.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of ratcheting up tension, I thought it was very interesting that we discussed this very thing.
I thought that while watching it.
I mean, admittedly, the Angels, we know they're coming. We know the title of the episode. We get the sneak peek and the Angels.
And we had a little bit of
we had a
in the last
springboard
episode.
Yeah, we get a pretty good springboard off of that for the discussion last week. But we talked about this exact scenario.
That's the crazy thing about that, though, and I think that was something that I appreciated about this story as well, is, as we said last week, and Keith pointed this out, that we were talking about the image of an angel is an angel. And we said, and Keith said, at least they are, they've built that lore. They haven't shoved it aside and just pretended like it didn't exist anymore. They've gone ahead and built on it since that's become part of the lore. And I think that the angel on board idea in this one, I think as we debated it last week on how that works, and that we didn't quite, or I said I didn't quite like that part of it. They went with it this week, and they addressed it, and I think it actually, and maybe it's just coming off the high of such a good episode, but I'm a little more okay with the onboard angel idea, especially when the doctor was able to make contact with it and in her subconscious and have that communication, and it almost sold that idea of the onboard image, or not image, but the angel in the mind idea.
They deepened the idea
more
than just it was a way for the Angel the Manifest, it took it and explored it in a new direction where it's an angel hiding out, as opposed to just being menacing. There was other motivations behind it, so it gave not only the angels depth and some more character development, but the ideas depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that for me, I think was, while I feel like the rest of the image of an angel becomes an angel with pictures and drawings and monitors. I feel like those elements worked so much better in this than they ever did in Flesh and Stone. That they just, it's kind of like we took that idea and made it work.
Well, more so because we actually got to see the mechanics of it a little bit more. Whereas
that might be it, yeah.
In Flesh and Stone, we only really got the image of the angel being the angel on that monitor. And that's all we really kind of talked about. And so this time, actually, like you say, getting the drawings, getting the etchings, in turn getting the monitor, and on building on top of that, I think it kind of helped to kind of see it in action a little better as well. And it was realized very
Seen
well.
it more than once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And cool ways to make it even creepier, with it coming out of the TV and the angel coming out of the drawing, the way it projected out of the drawing, and then crumpled and then caught fire, and very cool.
And then manifesting on fire, which was crazy.
So I'm sitting on the couch watching this super late Sunday night. It's like, I don't know, midnight or something, because we had a very long day. And it's super late. Mel's working in her office, and she has been so busy. She has not seen any of this season yet. We've been trying to find a time for her to get caught up and just haven't been successful. But in order for me to be current with the podcast, it's like, well, hon, I'm going to have to watch it without you. So she knows the angels are in it, obviously. She can hear some of the audio from the other room. And all she can hear, other than the little blips and blurbs, is me going, oh, ooh, ah, along with a few relatively choice descriptor words that I will not repeat on the podcast. Now, when that thing came out on fire, I think I created a few new swear words. Because not only was this episode legit scary, which it was, I was kind of lamenting the fact this wasn't the Halloween episode.
I thought the same.
But it kept that tension level. Like, it starts off and there's a level of tension, and it maintained it. And then it ratcheted up, and it maintained that level. And then it ratcheted up, and it maintained that level. I mean, it was just this outstanding, bring to a rolling boil kind of feeling. Yeah. And then this thing comes out on fire. And as Keith said, after, she crumples it up, and the image goes, and it's like, oh, that was cool, And she throws it and I'm thinking, okay, good. And I was really grateful, because I was expecting her to point the Sonic at it and have it light on fire. I'm pretty sure we've seen that at one point in time in the past, and I complained about it.
Have we?
But I don't know. Maybe it felt like it was something.
I don't think so. But yeah, you're right. It was refreshing that she didn't.
But she didn't. She lit a match. I was like, oh, thank goodness. And so I'm just getting over my relief of, burn it up. Nope.
Don't burn it up. Don't burn it up.
And I just had this whole, what do you do? What do you do? What's scarier than a burning it? Now, I guess, okay, if you really want to analyze it, if it's on fire, there's always going to be a light source. So maybe it wouldn't be as scary if it was on fire, because then we get to the tunnel scene later. But still, the thing was on fire. Oh, my God.
Speaking of the tunnel, after I thought it couldn't get any scarier than Flaming Angel, suddenly Angel arms coming out of the stonework of the tunnel. Wow, that was intense. That was so intense. And the boom that would happen every time they would move. Boom, boom. That was just, oh man, it was so good. And I kept thinking, how are they going to get out of this? The whole time I'm thinking, how are they going to get out of this? Now, coming up to the conclusion, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but just all the way up to that point, I kept thinking, how are they going to get out of this? Especially when the first time that Yaz and Dan walk up to the edge of the village, and they're talking. Peggy talks about how it's encroaching and coming closer each time, and she takes him to show it to him, and they're just like on the edge of space. And I thought, okay, wait a minute.
I did not expect that to come.
I thought, how does that work? And number one, I'm very intrigued. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. But then I'm thinking, okay, how does this work? Because they're just sending them back in time to 1901. So why is there suddenly just a chunk of the Earth missing and all you can see is space? And then when we realized that the same thing is happening in the 1960s, and they explained the whole the village is not there anymore. It's been quantum extracted. I thought, oh, wow, what an amazing concept. What a great idea that's how they've pulled these people out of, their own realities, and they've been quantum extracted. I thought, wow, that is so cool.
And my first thought was that the realization that they're part of the division.
Yeah.
And that's how they were able to do it, not because they were weeping angels. The fact that it was the combination of the two is just really well done.
Well, yeah, that dropping that bomb that they're working for the division, it was like, whoa.
And my first thought when I saw that effect, well, first of all, it was a cool effect. But my first thought was, well, it has to do with the flux. That something has happened and now it's reaching back into the past and has destroyed the planet, and or something along those lines. But then the quantum extraction came out, and it was like, okay, no, wait a minute. Does that mean what I'm thinking I think it means? And the more they talked about this idea of quantum extraction, the more I went, okay, yeah, this totally means what I think it means. And it's interesting because not everybody is enamored with this. I was actually just reading an article from, I think it was on IO9, which, admittedly, IO9 is suspect in some cases for things. But they were very despondent on the episode and talked about how much of the Weeping Angel lore has now been destroyed by giving them all these new abilities. They can talk through people. They can do this. They can
what? They did that in Flesh and Stone.
And I thought that to myself. I was like, have you never watched this show before? Or have you only seen Blink? Because it seems like all of these things are things that have come along. And not only are these things that came along, they're all things that this episode really defined better, because whatever ability they're doing, it's very specific to this episode to explain how they're doing it. I thought,
yes,
including the quantum extraction.
Yeah.
The only it's not that angels can do this; it's that they're working for the division. So I don't think it's all angels.
No,
it's just this group of angels that are employees of the division, as it were.
Correct, right? That's the way I took it as well.
And maybe apparently there's still some confusion about that out there, but it's like, that's not what I got from this at all. So I'm glad you guys are on the same page with me.
No, absolutely.
But as it went, and we kept getting, and it's funny that we've really focused on the Doctor's kind of through arc with the angels primarily, and didn't really talk much about the rest of the goings on in the episode, because we've got this missing girl, and of course we're all in the know. When you title your episode "Village of the Angels," it's like, oh, they got her. You're not going to find her out there. Right. You're not going to find her out there in the woods. She is gone. But then I felt like that had, a very satisfactory wibbly wobbly.
Yeah, with her, her future self,
although I saw
trying to warn people. I sort of did too, but her future self trying to warn people about what was happening. I thought that was kind of neat. And then
as soon as the old lady showed up in the graveyard, was trying to warn the priest, I was like, oh, I know who that is.
And when they meet at that divide where there's that, force field between them, and she starts to remember, she goes, oh, I remember this, and the strange lady on the other side, and realizing, that's me. And that was kind of neat.
But I felt like that was quality. I felt like the all of the angel reveals worked for me. The one hidden in the graveyard, and which then that kind of set me off on a whole thought process of cemeteries and no, I'm not ready for that. And so, all of that worked. And then the annoying uncle,
and his
comeuppance. which is kind of one of those. It's like, okay, he totally deserved it. I don't know that she did, but
Right. And also seemed a little flippant and crass when the little girl wasn't even affected by it. Because she says, well, how'd she say? He was never nice to me or something like that.
He was never nice to me.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay, but still, it's maybe he didn't deserve a fate worse than death.
I don't know. I think it's kind of, if you're in that position and under the thumb of something like that, and we don't know the details of what was going on, but at the same time, it's
I think that's why I can kind of let it pass a little bit, because there may have been more to it. But
would any of the orphans complained if Miss Hannigan had been turned to dust in front of them? Nah, probably not.
I disagree there, but
really?
Yeah. I mean, Mrs. Hannigan,
Annie, right?
Yeah, Mrs. Hannigan wasn't the best, and nobody wanted to stay with her. But I don't think anybody wanted ill will for her, especially when she kind of.
Oh man, I did.
She sort of has a redemption moment at the end, though, too. So.
Okay, that's a sidetrack moment, but no, I'm angry. I do not like the fact that you show up to that birthday party at the end of that movie and act like nothing's wrong.
Well,
that makes me angry.
But, the redemption moment is when she's trying to stop the brother from pursuing Annie up the girder, because she knows
too little, too late.
She knows at that point that he's going to kill her, and she's not going to go that far. So
too little, too late. But
anyway,
I digress.
Back from this tangent. So, and then the other thing that's going on here is we're getting more of Belle's story, and then we get to see Vinder, obviously, when he finally catches up to the planet. Yeah. So, who was it last week that said that he didn't think that Vinder and Belle's story was over yet?
No one.
That was me. Yeah.
I think I might have said something.
I think I said
that,
I don't think their part's over with. But.
Oh yeah, we all didn't think it wasn't over.
Oh, okay, all right.
We all thought it was going to continue.
Yeah. Well, I think there were some hopeful comments that maybe that was it.
I don't remember making those comments.
I think they were hopeful.
I don't think so either. I enjoyed her arc.
Yeah. Okay. But I think they gave us a little bit more. I don't know that it gave us any more other than she was pretty resolute to move on and keep was it Azura from using Passenger on more people. And she did say the one guy who at the end, I think, finally realized that when he tells Vinder, tell her thank you, because I think she saved me.
Yeah,
and it was interesting to kind of see what's been going on in the universe, what the Doctor's dealing with, whatever the Doctor's dealing with, and the idea that
it's a nice way to step away and say, "Hey, remember this is happening."
Yeah, and the fact that Azura is capturing people for whatever reason, I think that just kind of adds to their mystery overall and what they're plotting, and reminding us that they're still out there doing something.
Yeah, I think that for me might be the one part of this episode that doesn't quite track well. But again, like Keith said, because it's part of this larger arc, I mean, we were already told that these passenger forms that contain people.
And
so now we've been
given,
and now we've been given the backstory on how they contain people that they're, ostensibly, quote unquote, rescuing. And no, we're just trapping them and leaving them in there, and then we'll dispose of them as needed. But for me, it's still kind of in this nebulous, well, what is your end game? What are you using these people? It's not just that they're, chess pieces to be moved around or hostages to be bargained with. I don't buy that. I think there's a deeper reason for it all, but we haven't been given yet. And because we still don't know that felt almost too much of an aside, that it was, okay, things are bad. Get back to get back to the angels. Oh, that one was on fire. Did you see that? I don't care what's going on this planet. Bad. Okay, move on. But again, once they reveal what's going on, I'll probably be more excited about it.
Well, we haven't really talked about Claire yet, especially since we met her in the first episode of the season.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure that out because she acts like she has met the Doctor and Yaz before when we are introduced to her in the Halloween apocalypse. And my impression was that we were going to kind of see the reverse of that here, which we kind of did, but then I kind of wondered why we didn't explain that Claire had traveled back a couple of times or something like that.
Well,
in this
I don't think it was the fact that she traveled back a couple of times.
It's not. They explained it in a way that she has these premonitions, and that's how she saw the Doctor and Yaz. But I thought, that's not the way you sort of delivered it in the first one, and maybe I had made it up bigger in my head, but that seemed kind of like a cheat to me. Just a little bit of okay, she has premonitions, so she saw them, and that's how she, in her mind, and that's how she knew. But it does make sense that if the angel that was on board was baiting the Doctor, it does make sense that that he would plant that image, or it would plant those images. So I was kind of wishy-washy on that, but
yeah, when we meet her in the first one, it seems very apparent to me when she goes, "Oh, you haven't met me yet," or whatever, or is that tonight? And then when the angel shows up, it's like, "Oh, well, okay, she obviously will meet them. We just haven't been introduced to that." Okay, with you. But then this time around, it's like, "Oh, she has these premonitions, and that's how she knew that she would meet them." And it's like, well, but she's still from the future, so she doesn't necessarily need that. But well, I guess it still works. I don't know. I agree with you. It's it was there, but again, didn't matter.
I guess at this point, it felt like that was the only way Chibnall could get her into the first episode, and because he went to great lengths to try to introduce us to a lot of the players in that first story, and it seemed like that after we finally got the explanation for that, it felt like a cheaty way to do it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I can see that.
That means that I liked her as a character.
I did. I liked her as a character as well. Yeah, she was good, and it was well done. I liked her a lot. It was unfortunately that she was just being used as a puppet. Yeah, as bait. And I really believed the angel that he was, when he said that if she could get them to quit chasing him, and I bought that hook, line, and sinker, that he was this rogue angel and that he was running from them, and they kind of still left that way, because at the end she tells him that he had made a deal with them instead of, they were chasing him, but he was going to make a trade, his life or his freedom, I guess, for the Doctor's. And so it still ended up that way.
I think he always knew that he was going to be able to make that trade.
Yes, exactly. I think that he's been baiting her all along. Don't get me wrong. And I think that in the moment of them talking, he was still lying to her. But
he was lying about needing her help. He just needed her into a position where he could do the trade.
Right. And then that brings us to that, probably one of the best cliffhangers I've ever seen in the entire series. Of the Doctor transforming into an angel. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a cliffhanger where it's how can you even resolve that in a satisfactory way?
Yeah. Which goes back to what you were saying at the very beginning, that if they don't, you could have, that would maybe for you taint this episode a little bit. I still disagree, but I agree in the fact that you did such an amazing cliffhanger here. If your resolution isn't as good, then I'm going to be upset. Not with what you did at the end of this one, but how you tried to resolve it in the next one.
Yeah.
That's the tightrope. And I almost felt like it was, once I got over the shock of it, it almost felt like it was one dun 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 too many. because you get the reveal that the Angel's in on it, and that, oh, we've traded you, and that's how we're getting out of here. Well, first of all, you got that fantastic visual of all of them, and coming out of the tunnel mouth. I'm going, oh, this is not good. And then you find out that the Angel has betrayed her, and nope, it's you that we've been after this whole time, and that we're Division. And it's like, holy crap, what's going to happen? Oh yeah, we're heading back now. You've been recalled. And it's like, okay, here we go. This is the big wow. And then the transformation happens, and the Doctor actually sprouts wings and turns to stone. So now I'm like, okay, so is this a side effect of quantum extraction, that you have to be turned into a quantum being in order to be removed from the the time stream, as it were, to go back? Or is there something else at work? Or has the Doctor been an angel all along and had an angel inside of her and didn't know it? Or does it fall under the new guidelines of that which holds the image of an angel becomes an angel? There's so many different ways that could be taken.
Yeah.
And I just felt like maybe it was one thing too many to pile on the plate.
Well, I imagine,
especially when you have the when you then later have the realization, oh well, now Dan and Yaz, because the Doctor's being recalled, is trapped back in time.
Yeah,
that alone at one point would have been its own cliffhanger.
Yeah, absolutely. It sort of makes you wonder, because that is the one thing that we're left with questions as far as the powers that the Angels have. That is one thing that I can credit IO9 with, is, yeah, there's one that maybe we don't know, but I'm presuming that's going to be answered, later on. So,
yeah, and in a cliffhanger situation, again, I'm not upset. I'm going to allow it because, wow, what a cliffhanger, as you said, possibly the best one in the history of the show. It was that impressive, and it was amazing. And the whole episode is great like that. Now, the only concern that I have, we have a ton of plates spinning. We have a lot of balls in the air. We have 2 episodes left.
Yeah.
I don't know, unless the 2 specials that are coming up next year are actually Flux Part 7 and 8.
That's what I'm afraid of, is that they're going to carry this Flux story into the specials.
I don't know, if there's no subplots or no other plots that are happening, they could potentially wrap this up in 2 episodes. If all they do is focus on Flux storylines and
how it all ties together.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 episodes worth, easy. That is almost
well. They're going to have to.
Much.
They're going to have to. I can't see them doing any more "quote unquote" standalones, because I think we didn't really have a standalone this season. But if you forced me to pick which ones were standalone or standalone-ish, it would be this one and the War of the Sontarans.
Yeah.
Which, funnily enough, is another of the antagonist. So it's the something of the antagonist.
I think the war, for me, the War of the Sontarans is definitely the standalone of the episode. That their events tie into the overall plot structure because they're just taking advantage of it, but that's kind of the extent of it. Whereas this one, I don't know that I could say that. Yeah, I mean, this one has got a standalone villain in a way. It's, because we've had, oh, here's the Daleks show up. Oh, here's the Cybermen show up. Oh, here's the show up. And, not all of them got a full-blown episode, but this has been Doctor Who's greatest hits as far as trotting out villain of the week. But by that same token, this is the one that feels honestly the most integrated in a way. Even last week, which was all plot, and I complained about, well, it feels like it's, I can't make a judgment call on it because I don't know where they're going with it yet. This one almost feels like more of that, but it was done, in my mind, so much better. And maybe just because of how the Weeping Angels fit into this thing.
I guess, though, this one structurally, though, has a beginning, middle, and end, even though the end isn't the end that we wanted or the end that we expected. But the reason I think it feels more standalone-ish is because, for the most part, it focuses on one consistent story. It's not jumping around as much. Now, we did get the Bell story interweaved in here, but we didn't get as much of it. And so there was a lot more focus on the Angels. And I guess I agree with you, War of the Sontarans feels much more like a standalone. But this one, because it had a beginning, middle, and end, it really, to me, still felt like it could have been a standalone story had you not had all of the underlying structure in there of if you didn't have Division in there, if you didn't have Bell in there, if you didn't have that kind of stuff. And in fact, I very much suspect
I think it started off as a standalone.
That Maxine Alderton came into this with a story, and Chibnall said, well, let's go this direction with it, because and she's a wonderful writer. She also did, which I think we all enjoyed, The Haunting of Villa Diodati. We all liked that, and it was proper scary as well. So she's really got a handle on horror, in my opinion.
Yeah, she really does.
But I bet she came with one idea that I think probably the meat of it, the meat of it was still there. But I think Chib probably said, okay, well, what if we did this so we can connect it to what I'm doing here?
Yeah.
Some of it depends on how the Division aspect of things tie into kind of the Flux aspect of things too. Because if the Division is a setup for, specials and resolution or regeneration, specials and regeneration, that makes this episode a little more standalone in the Flux storyline. So it all depends on how it ties in later, or if it does tie in later. We're gonna have to stand back and look at Flux as a whole to really see where the standalone is.
My suspicion is that we're not going to get much more Angel after this, and I think the reason is because I think by making this faction of Angels part of Division, they're only now working as a delivery service for something else. I think their goal was to capture the Doctor. They've done that. Now they have to drop her off, and then they're done. I think that's where this is going to end up going. So that, to me, is why also I think this is more standalone than anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, good stuff. We liked it, so we don't go as long, but we've talked about 45 minutes on it, so I guess if we really, really like something, we go long too. So.
Oh, I could keep going.
Well, do we have any finishing thoughts about the story? Anything we haven't touched on that you guys want to talk about? Excited you about it? We've kind of we've hit on all my points. Oh, the mid-credit scene. We haven't seen a mid-credit scene since what? Haven't seen it? I mean, that was just boom, right out of nowhere. And I like how the credits are rolling, and then you get this like interrupting transmission, and then we get that scene, and then we get the same interrupted transmission back, and we just pick up the credits where we left off. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And it was satisfying that this near religious zealot from the previous scene, she, tell her she saved my life, tell her thank you.
Yeah.
Or I think she saved my, okay. That kind of helps resolve that and wraps that up. And then poor Vendor, coordinates. You probably need to know that. And what are you doing to us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
These two better get back together. That's that's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. They better get back together. I will be very upset.
They better not be the tragedy of this story.
Right, exactly. We'd like to take a moment to mention that we are now part of the Direction Point Podcast Network. It's a network specifically for Doctor Who podcasts like ours. Other podcasts on the network include the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast, the Doctor Who Target Book Club Podcast, Police Box in a Junkyard Podcast, and Time Streams. You can find us all at directionpoint.org. Be sure to check it out. All right, well, I think we've got a special secret word to give out this week. So, Sean, you want to take that?
I will. Once again, if you've been listening, we are giving away a copy of Looney Labs Flux, the card game, the Doctor Who edition. And they were kind enough to gift us one, and we are kind enough to pass it on to you. All you have to do to get registered is to email us with the code word. Tonight's code word is Flaming. Flaming. And if you've seen it, you know why.
As we discussed earlier.
Right. All right. Well, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, we've got 2 episodes of Who left, and we've got two episodes of the schedule left. That's as far as I've planned out. So next week we'll come back with Survivors of the Flux and find out, hopefully, what's going on.
I think the other
Only
thing.
someone.
I think the other thing we can let people know is we are aware that Evil of the Daleks released in North America for us last week. In fact, I just got my copy, and we do have that. I think if Sean will let us, we're going to hopefully put that on the schedule right after we're done reviewing the current season.
I guess we can do that.
I twist your arm a little bit.
You twist my arm.
So we don't want people to go, hey, a DVD came out. You guys aren't going to do anything on it? But yes, we are. It's coming soon.
And I can't wait. I'm very excited, actually, even though,
me too.
Even though it's a Dalek episode.
Funny enough, that's probably one of the only Lost stories that I have not completely listened to the recon on. I started it on a trip, and my copy, the rest of it was corrupted. And so I heard the first 2 stories of it, and I always intended to go back and finish it, and I don't think I ever have. So I know the details of the story just from stuff I've read, but I've only ever listened to the first 2 episodes of it. So I'm excited for this one too, because this will be the last thing that I haven't taken in its entirety in any form. So
Really?
yeah.
Nice.
All right, well, be sure to check out the website, travelingthevortex.com, for updates. And if you get any value out of this podcast, why not put some value back into it? You can do that by becoming a patron on our Patreon account. And subscribers, heads up, if you didn't know, we do have some additional content. I have started continuing to review the comic adventures that I started back mid-year, I think it was. So if you are a subscriber, you can continue with me on that journey, and we're going to hopefully offer some other exclusives for people as well, because we want to give you guys something back for helping us out. And so our commitment to you is to make sure that you guys are getting something just a little bit special, and would maybe entice others to kind of help us out with the podcast by donating to our Patreon and getting that extra bonus stuff as well. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to the podcast, and join in on the conversation in our listeners forum on Facebook. You can find a link to that on our Facebook page. Anything else we need to do before we close this show out, fellas? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.